He came to this town to forget. But when a body drops at mile marker 47, Jack Thorne realizes peace was never in the cards, and neither was silence. The rain had just started falling when Jack Thorne rolled into Benwood, Nevada, a forgotten highway town carved into the high desert, population barely 3,000. He wasn't planning to stay long. Just long enough to disappear for a while. The diner smelled like wet pavement, stale coffee, and cheap sugar. Exactly how he liked it. Jack sat with his back to the wall, habit, not paranoia, and sipped from a chipped white mug. The only sound was the humming of fluorescent lights and the occasional screech of a wiper blade cutting through the windshield of an old pickup outside. He wasn't wearing a uniform anymore, but he still moved like a man who had. Neat. Quiet. Deliberate. Everything he carried was black, gray, or olive, nothing that caught attention. A duffel bag at his feet. A notepad with no notes. A man in transit. Then the door creaked open, and the town's rhythm changed. 2 state troopers walked in, wet and stone-faced. The younger one looked shaken, still holding his hat awkwardly under one arm. The older officer nodded at the waitress, then looked around. His eyes paused on Jack for a beat too long. "You see anything strange around mile marker 47 this morning?" the older cop asked. Jack didn't blink. "No. Just got here 20 minutes ago." The cop nodded, but the question lingered in the air like gun smoke. They weren't just here for coffee. Something had happened. Outside, the rain thickened. Jack's reflection in the diner window looked like a ghost. That night, Jack parked his rig outside a local warehouse and locked the cab. He didn't usually sleep in town, but something about the trooper's unease stuck with him. He kept the sidearm in his footlocker, old habit. Desert nights could turn mean. At 2:14 a.m., the noise woke him, a low crunch, like metal being moved without permission. Jack slid from the bunk silently, peering through the small window. He saw 3 silhouettes by the side gate of the warehouse. One had bolt cutters. Another was scanning the lot with a flashlight. They were in and out like professionals, no wasted movement. He slipped on his boots, but stayed in the shadows. Watching. Counting. Not local punks. These guys knew what they were doing. The bolt cutters dropped with a dull thud. One of them kicked open a side door. Another pulled something, or someone, from a black van that hadn't been there the night before. Jack's stomach twisted. A man, barely conscious, his face bloodied and duct tape around his wrists, was dragged inside. The next 30 seconds felt longer than any firefight Jack had survived. Then the side door slammed shut. No screams. Just silence. Jack stepped back, breathing slowly. He'd left a lot behind when he left the Corps, some people, some regrets. But one thing he'd never left was the part of him that couldn't walk away from something like this. He turned on his engine at 2:28 a.m. and rolled the rig out of the lot without a sound. But instead of heading to the interstate, he circled back toward the other side of town. He had a burner phone in the glove box, and someone in Denver who still owed him a favor. He didn't know who the man in the warehouse was, or why he'd been taken. But Jack knew this much: no one gets kidnapped by professionals in the middle of a rainstorm, in the middle of nowhere, unless it's very bad for someone else. And if Benwood was about to turn bloody, Jack Thorne wanted eyes on the road before it happened. The next morning, the local news barely mentioned the disturbance at the warehouse. Some anonymous tip had brought in a fire crew to investigate a gas leak. No mention of suspects. No arrests. Just silence. Jack watched from the diner, his coffee untouched. Same waitress. Same awkward trooper from the day before, now visibly tenser, lips pressed white. Whatever this was, the town was pretending it wasn't happening. He hated that. At 9:42 a.m., his burner lit up. Blocked number. One ring. Then a voice, female. Calm. Direct. You were right to call. Don't ask questions. There's a shipment leaving tonight. Westbound. It's not what it says on the manifest. Then silence. Line dead. Jack stared at the phone, heart steady, breath shallow. Benwood wasn't just a sleepy rest stop anymore. It was a front. And someone just marked him as either an asset, or a threat. He finished his coffee, dropped a 20 on the counter, and walked out into the desert sun, the weight of the desert heat already pressing in. But something colder was coming. Jack didn't sleep that night. Instead, he waited. By 11 p.m., he was sitting in the cab of his Peterbilt in the far corner of Lot C, half hidden behind a stack of decaying trailers. He'd spent the day doing recon, noting who came in and out of the Benwood distribution hub, who had clearance, which trucks left empty, and which ones didn't. The security presence was subtle. Not uniforms. Private. Plainclothes types pretending to be drivers or foremen, but Jack saw the tactical belts under the jackets, the radio bulges, the off-duty posture of men who'd been trained to kill and paid to do it quietly. A white box truck pulled in at 11:18 p.m. Its license plate was partially obscured with a smear of mud. Too deliberate to be accidental. Two men climbed out, both in cargo pants and hoodies. The rear of the truck was padlocked, but no shipping company logos were visible. Jack snapped a photo through his side mirror, zoomed in on the faces, and sent it via his encrypted app to the contact in Denver. 1 minute later, he got a text back, recognized. Linked to ops in Dakota and AZ. No paper trail. Not law enforcement. The message hit like a brick. Jack stepped out of the cab under the pretense of stretching. Walked across the lot slowly, scanning. A nearby truck, a flatbed, had its engine idling but no one in the cab. Jack noted it. Could be a lookout, or bait. He kept walking, hands in pockets, head down, casual. Then he spotted it. The manifest clipboard. Hanging from a cracked plexiglass board on the wall near the loading bay. No guards. No cameras pointed directly. Just poorly lit paperwork, the kind no one ever checked. Unless they knew what they were looking for. Jack moved in, quiet as fog. Snapped a few fast photos of the top 2 pages, then kept walking. No alarms. No shouts. But as he passed a row of stacked pallets, a voice called out. You lost, man. Jack turned. One of the hoodie guys. Young, lean, buzz cut. Not Benwood local. Jack put on the voice he used when bluffing checkpoints in the Koran-Gao. Looking for Bay 12. Got a double hitch to grab for Fresno. Buzzcut narrowed his eyes. Fresno's not on tonight's outbound. Jack shrugged. Tell that to dispatch. Buzzcut smirked. You knew. Jack smiled thinly. Just passing through. That ended the conversation, but not the suspicion. Jack turned back toward his rig, walking slow, unhurried. But he felt eyes on him the whole way back. Inside the cab, he pulled up the manifest photos. No fertilizer. No chemicals. No agricultural company names. Instead, boxes labeled as VHLM, K3 Red, and Group C, NCR. And under special handling, by name, not by number. He tapped into his off-grid laptop and began cross-referencing keywords. Took 10 minutes before anything showed up. K3 Red wasn't a product. It was a code name. Specifically, a controlled substance trial medication, unapproved, linked to a private medical firm, Aversol Dynamics, currently under federal investigation for black site clinical trials on veterans and undocumented patients. Jack's jaw tightened. The deeper he read, the uglier it got. The manifest wasn't a shipping record. It was a roster. Names of test subjects. Locations. Status codes, cleared, ongoing, closed. Jack scrolled. One name stopped him cold. Ramon Vega, closed. He knew that name. 4 years ago, Ramon's truck was found burning in a ditch outside Santa Fe. Official cause, brake failure. But Jack remembered how paranoid Ramon had been on his last few convoys, saying he was being followed, that someone was rerouting medical runs. Jack had chalked it up to PTSD. Now he knew better. They hadn't just gotten rid of Ramon. They'd processed him. At 2:07 a.m., Jack hit the secured frequency. Ghost Bird 1 to Outpost North. Are you reading me? A crackle. Then a voice, female, low. Reading you. What have you got? He hesitated, then answered. Human cargo. Confirmed. Copy. Exfil. Negative. Still in motion. A pause. Then, Benwood's off-grid. If they're staging there, it means they're gearing up. Jack looked out across the empty highway. They're not staging. They're distributing. Silence. Then, send what you've got. And Jack, don't let them see you twice. At dawn, the flatbed truck was gone. So was the white box truck. But the warehouse was still locked up tight. Jack rolled out of Benwood that morning, but not empty-handed. He had names. Coordinates. And a reason. And he wasn't the only one watching anymore. Feds weren't talking. The sheriff was pretending nothing was wrong. But when a sealed medical container is found in a junkyard, Jack knows silence isn't just dangerous, it's deliberate. Benwood had one radio station, 2 churches, and a sheriff's department that looked like a converted feed store. The sheriff, Miles Denner, wore mirrored aviators indoors and used toothpicks like punctuation. Jack had been sitting across from him for 20 minutes, trying to read a man who clearly didn't want to be read. No complaints have been filed. No reports of missing persons. What exactly do you want me to do, Mr. Thorne? Denner asked, tapping his desk like it owed him something. I want to know why a private transport van with blacked-out plates offloaded something at the warehouse behind Lot C 2 nights ago. The sheriff chuckled. Lot C's got cameras. You see a crime on one of them? Jack didn't blink. They were turned off. Coincidence. And the access logs? Lost in a systems update. Happens. Jack leaned forward. You've had 4 trucks go missing along Route 76 in the last month. All carrying controlled materials. All rerouted through Benwood. Denner's smile faded. You're not law enforcement, Mr. Thorne. Nope. Just asking questions. Well, stop asking. You stay long enough in this town, you'll realize the desert doesn't like outsiders poking around. Jack stood. I served in places hotter and meaner than this, Sheriff. Desert doesn't scare me. Denner didn't look up. It should. Jack walked straight from the station to a junkyard on the edge of town. It wasn't on any official registry, which made it more interesting. Locals called it Morty's, though Jack never found a Morty, just an old mechanic named Gwen with bad knees and a sharp eye. He traded her a case of diesel filters and a promise to fix her breaker panel for 15 minutes of quiet access behind the main hangar. There, under a tarp-covered pile of crushed panels, he found it, a black medical container the size of a small coffin, dented but intact. It still had a seal on it, military-style tamper band, and a red sticker marked biological, handle with care. Gwen stood nearby, arms crossed. Guy dropped it here a few nights ago. Told me it was just refrigeration junk. Paid cash. Description: about 6 feet tall, spoke like a lawyer but dressed like a mercenary. Didn't give a name. Didn't need to. Jack opened the lid carefully. Inside, nothing. Just a metal bracket where something had once been secured, and a sealed evidence tag with a QR code. He scanned it with his offline tablet. It opened a manifest. VHL M03 subject, Blakely, Allen status, redirected chain of custody, transferred, Site 4B. Jack's jaw clenched. Alan Blakely was a former Navy corpsman, went missing last spring after a clinic appointment in New Mexico. His family had been searching ever since. The case went cold in less than 2 weeks. Now he had proof the man had been in this container. And someone had gone to a lot of trouble to make him vanish. Back in his rig, Jack called his Denver contact. "Send everything to the vault," he said. "Metadata, scans, audio, all of it. This isn't isolated." The reply came quick: "You're not just on their radar now. You're on their list. Stay mobile. Eyes open." He knew what that meant. Every camera in Benwood. Every gas pump. Every diner booth. Someone was watching. So he left town. But not before stopping at the payphone behind the truck wash. He dialed a number from memory. A number he hadn't used in 6 years. It rang once. Twice. Then a click. No voice. Just breathing. Jack spoke low. "It's me. I need eyes on Site 4B. Somewhere in Utah or southern Idaho. Quiet op black van, medical transport." The silence on the line held for a few seconds. Then, acknowledged. The call ended. By sunset, Jack was on Highway 80, heading west. The road was empty, save for a rusted-out tow truck limping along in the opposite lane. He didn't notice the dark SUV until it merged 3 miles back and kept the exact same distance behind him. No headlights. Jack's hands gripped the wheel tighter. He slowed slightly. The SUV matched him. He changed lanes. So did they. At mile marker 227, he made a hard exit, swung through a gas station, and parked near the car wash. The SUV cruised past. Didn't stop. But Jack had already memorized the plate, and it wasn't a local registry. He checked his rear camera again. Another SUV, same make, same style, was now parked at the edge of the lot. They were rotating tails. This wasn't just surveillance. It was a warning. Jack popped the glove box and pulled out an old cloth-wrapped bundle. Inside, a GPS jammer, 2 flares, and a well-worn sidearm. He hadn't carried it since Fallujah. But tonight, it went on his hip. Something was unraveling, and Jack Thorne wasn't going to wait until it reached his door. States away, in a canyon facility that doesn't show on maps, something is being tested. And Jack's not the only one closing in, he's just the first without a badge. The mountains got sharper as Jack drove north. He avoided major interstates, sticking to state routes and trucker paths most people didn't even realize were mapped. He trusted those roads more. Fewer cameras. Fewer way stations with random searches. No eyes from satellites pretending to be weather monitoring. By the time he reached a truck stop outside Pocatello, Idaho, the burner phone chirped. A text. No name. Just a set of GPS coordinates. 43.3119, minus 112.4647, Site 4B, unconfirmed. He plugged the numbers into an offline map. What came up was nothing. Not a road. Not a trail. Just beige and topographic lines. A dead patch in the desert shaped like a boot print. Jack muttered under his breath. Of course. He fueled up, grabbed a burner coffee, and left his rig with a trusted driver named Kip, ex-Air Force, part of the quiet network of veterans and long haulers who knew better than to ask questions but always knew when to listen. You expecting trouble? Kip asked as Jack handed over the keys. Jack gave a half smile. I'm not expecting anything. That's usually when it shows up. He took Kip's ATV and followed a washed-out service road for 2 hours. The air got thinner. Cell signal disappeared. The landscape went from rugged to downright hostile. And then he saw it. At first glance, it was just another canyon wall, until you noticed the symmetry. Carved lines. Vents. The faint glint of solar panels disguised as rock formations. Camouflaged cameras, but older models, industrial, not government issue. He parked the ATV behind a boulder and took the long way in. Jack moved like a ghost through the rocks. No perimeter guards. No drones. Just a facility so confident in its secrecy, it hadn't bothered with a fence. That meant whoever ran it was either very stupid, or very well connected. He reached the main access door by sunset. A keypad. No camera. No guard post. He tried the oldest trick in the book, pressed the emergency call button, then immediately jammed a folded gum wrapper into the hinge. The panel shorted, sparked, then popped open. Behind it, a manual override. 10 minutes later, he was inside. The hallway was cold and too quiet. Fluorescent lights flickered above. The walls were sterile. No logos. No direction signs. Not even exit painted on the doors. But Jack followed the airflow, and the smell. A faint chemical tang, like antiseptic mixed with ozone. He passed a room with steel cages. Empty. Another with stretchers. Then he found the room that made his blood freeze. A single desk. Monitors. And a wall of photos, ID-style shots of men and women. Veterans, mostly. Some looked alert. Others didn't. Half the photos were stamped, closed. He scanned the desk quickly. No flash drives. Just paper logs. One name leapt out immediately, Blakely, Allen, transferred to Phase 3A note scribbled beside it, unresponsive after second injection. Viable for containment. Jack's hands tightened on the edge of the desk. They weren't just testing on people. They were storing them. Then the lights cut out. Not flickered, cut. All at once. The hum of ventilation stopped. A dull alarm began to pulse, low frequency and rhythmic. Not for fire. Not for evacuation. Security lockdown. Jack grabbed the folder and bolted. He'd mapped the hallway mentally, picked a side exit 2 turns back. But as he reached it, a door ahead opened. A man stepped through, tall, tactical vest under a lab coat, pistol drawn. Jack dropped low and swept his leg. The man hit the floor hard. Jack didn't wait, one hit to the throat, another to the temple. Not fatal. But the guy would be dreaming sideways for hours. Jack stole the access badge and sprinted for the side exit. The badge worked. The door hissed open. Desert air blasted his face like a wave of freedom. 30 minutes later, he was back on the ATV, pushing it hard toward the valley. Behind him, a black shape lifted into the air, a surveillance drone, fast and silent. They knew someone had been inside. They just didn't know who, not yet. Jack met Kip after dark. Transferred the folder to a satchel, wiped his gloves, and checked the rig's mirrors 6 times before pulling onto the road again. He drove in silence for 2 hours before the phone chirped again. A voice message this time. Denver contact. 3 words. You're compromised. Move. Jack didn't respond. He already knew. Jack thought the files would spark investigations. Instead, they disappeared. When he finds a familiar face buried in the logs, it's no longer just a mission, it's personal. Jack pulled into a way station outside Twin Falls with a fake logbook, a wiped manifest, and a rig full of nothing but shadows. He wasn't supposed to be here. But after the last message, you're compromised. Move. He needed to vanish. Not lay low. Vanish. Inside the cab, he burned the Site 4B folder in a metal coffee can. Not because it wasn't useful, but because he'd already uploaded every page to 4 off-grid servers. 3 backups in other states. 1 in Iceland. He watched the pages curl and blacken in silence. The names, the photos, the directives. One face haunted him, Alan Blakely, a friend once. Gone, according to the logs. Erased. He thought of Blakely's wife. 2 kids. A man who served 14 years and got a pat on the back and a bill for hearing loss. Jack had known men disappear before. But never systematically. That night, he stopped in a motel outside Elko, Nevada. Paid in cash. No ID. No digital footprint. He logged into one of the servers using a secure protocol and opened the most recently uploaded batch of recovered data from Site 4B. A subfolder labeled Project Directive blinked in red. He clicked. Inside, a single video file. Timestamped 4 days before the raid. The footage was grainy. A boardroom. 6 men. 2 women. Faces partially obscured, but one was unmistakable. Sheriff Miles Denner. Jack leaned closer. Someone off-screen spoke. The driver profile from Benwood is a match. Prior experience, low visibility, strong psychological stability. He's viable. Another voice, you want to activate someone like that? No, said Denner. I want to push him. See what happens when he thinks it's his idea. Jack hit pause. Heart steady. Hands flat. A memory flashed, Denner offering him coffee, saying the desert doesn't like outsiders. Friendly tone. Fake concern. It wasn't just corruption anymore. It was recruitment. They'd tried to test him. Or worse, use him. A soft knock rattled the motel door. Jack's sidearm was in his hand before the second knock landed. Easy, came a voice through the door. It's Kip. Jack peered through the peephole. Confirmed. He opened it halfway. You weren't followed. Kip stepped inside. If I was, they're better than anything I've ever seen. He handed Jack a crumpled envelope. Found this taped under the truck's bunk. No prints. No traceable ink. Just this. Inside, a single typed line on plain white paper. Next stop isn't yours to choose. Jack stared at it. Kip scratched his neck. Feels like they're moving faster than we are. They're not moving faster, Jack said quietly. They're moving deliberately. At dawn, Kip rolled out east. He'd serve as decoy, taking Jack's rig on a bogus delivery route through Utah. Jack, meanwhile, headed south, in a different vehicle entirely, with different plates and no electronic devices. Destination, Phoenix. Specifically, an old army buddy now working cyber forensics out of a bunker below a church that doubled as a halfway house. 2 days later, Jack walked through a side door into a back room smelling like burnt plastic and solder. Cal Simmons looked like he hadn't slept in a year. "You always show up when things get weird," he muttered, pushing aside a mess of wires. "This time, I've got bodies, Jack. Real ones." Jack didn't sit. "How many?" 14. All veterans. All missing. All logged into the same dummy healthcare database tied to, get this, Aversol Dynamics. Jack didn't respond. Cal turned his monitor. But here's where it gets sick. Their files weren't deleted. Just edited. Status fields changed to deceased or transferred, but the back-end timestamps don't match. Someone changed them after they were already reported dead. He opened a second file. Ramon Vega, status, deceased then, a video snippet. Low res, timestamped 2 weeks ago. It showed Ramon, alive, restrained, in a clinical room, whispering the words, "If you're watching this, they moved us to Arizona. Facility under a dry lake. They're testing," the feed cut out. Jack's throat tightened. They weren't just targeting randoms. They were targeting the network. He stood, pacing. "I need to get to that lake bed." Cal nodded. "Already pinged it. Coordinates sent to your secure line." "But Jack, you're not going to like what's near it." "What?" "A military training zone. Closed to civilians. Hasn't been used in 10 years, on paper." Jack exhaled through his nose. "They're staging again." That night, Jack camped under an overpass just off Route 93, running scenarios in his head, eyes fixed on the sky. He wasn't the only one watching anymore. But he might still be the only one who understood what was coming. And the only one mad enough to walk into it alone. Beneath a dried-up lakebed in southern Arizona lies a facility built to disappear. Jack finds a way in, but someone already knows he's coming. The sun baked the Arizona desert in long, flat waves of heat that shimmered like a mirage. Jack crouched behind the wreckage of a decades-old radio tower, overlooking a vast stretch of cracked, bleached earth once known as Lake Verosa, now just dust, rock, and secrets. According to Cal's coordinates, the facility entrance was somewhere near the southern rim. No signage. No guard posts. Just a small rectangular patch of black asphalt that hadn't cracked like the rest of the desert floor. Too perfect. Too clean. He pulled out a pair of military-grade binoculars and scanned the area. A row of ventilation shafts. No visible personnel. No tire tracks. But there were drag marks, faint lines in the dust, like crates or containers had been pulled from one end of the site to the other. Jack noted the direction, west. Toward a ridge line. Covered by natural terrain. They weren't hiding in the lakebed. They were using it as a shell, a decoy. Whatever was happening here wasn't meant to be found. Which meant it was exactly where he needed to be. He waited until dusk. By then, the shadows stretched long enough to cover his approach. He moved low, across broken ground, carefully avoiding the reflective surface of the asphalt square. Up close, it wasn't just pavement, it was reinforced composite. Military grade. Likely armored. Probably a hatch. He tapped it once. Solid. Then he spotted a fingerprint scanner recessed beneath a loose gravel pile nearby. Old trick, bury the access point under a natural element to avoid satellite sweeps. Jack pulled out a tool kit from his bag and began bypassing the reader. 5 minutes later, a low hiss escaped from the edge of the panel. The hatch lifted 6 inches. Just enough for a man to slide through. He took one last look at the fading orange sky and dropped inside. The shaft was narrow, steep, and led straight into darkness. Jack descended using the embedded side rungs, counting steps. 45 feet down, the ladder ended at a sealed metal grate. He pried it loose. No alarms. Beyond it, a corridor, dimly lit, painted in dull gray. He moved slowly, scanning the walls. This wasn't a lab. It was military. Jack recognized the layout, modular design, designed to be built quickly and hidden completely. He passed a supply room. Then a control center. Monitors buzzed with static. But one still worked, showing a hallway lined with 6 containment cells. 5 of them were occupied. Jack stepped closer. Each room had a bed, a vitals monitor, and a subject restrained at the wrist. All men. All in their 30s to 50s. All showing signs of drug testing, injection sites, tremors, bandaged ports. Then a name tag caught Jack's eye. Vega, R, active. His breath caught. Ramon Vega, alive. And inside one of those cells. He scanned for a release system but found nothing. This wasn't built for rescue. It was built for control. Jack marked the location on his wrist map and kept moving. He had to know what they were doing before he took any action. He reached a large storage room. Medical equipment. Cold storage lockers. Dozens of sealed crates labeled with barcodes and acronyms. One crate sat open. Inside, vials of a yellow-tinted liquid. Labeled only K3R. He lifted one, careful not to disturb the seal. Then he saw the shipping manifest stuck to the inside of the lid. Destination, Pharmatrack Western Hub, San Bernardino. Handler, Aversal Logistics Division. Priority, Medical Black, unlisted inventory. This wasn't research. It was production. A sudden click echoed behind him. He turned. And froze. A figure stood in the doorway. Black tactical gear. Face obscured by a visor. Weapon raised, a stun rifle, military issue. The voice came through the helmet, calm, professional. "You're not supposed to be here, Mr. Thorne." Jack raised his hand slowly. "You knew I was coming. We didn't know when. But we prepared for it. Why not just eliminate me?" A pause. "Because someone higher wants to see what you'll do. Same ones that wanted to activate me in Benwood." The figure gave a small nod. Jack eyed the distance to the shelf behind him. Not close enough to reach before getting tagged. "So what now?" he asked. Another pause. "Then, now we find out whether you're a threat, or an opportunity." The stun rifle hissed once. Everything went white. Jack awoke in a small room. Bright light. Cold air. He was strapped to a gurney, but loosely. Not hospital tight. Testing tight. Across the room stood another man. Late 50s. blazer over a medical-grade biosuit. "Jack Thorne," he said, not unkindly. "You've caused us quite a bit of rerouting." Jack's voice was raw. "You're the architect." The man smiled. "Of one part of the machine, yes. But the machine is vast. You've seen pieces. We'd like to offer clarity. I'm not interested in your pitch. You will be," the man said quietly, "once you understand what K3R really is. What it does. And who it's being tested for." Jack stared at him. "You're selling it." The man didn't deny it. "You're turning veterans into test subjects. Into assets," the man corrected. "Ones no one will miss. Until someone like you comes along." He walked to the door. "When you're ready to talk, Mr. Thorne, press the call button." The door locked behind him. Jack stared at the ceiling. Then at the wristband now clipped to his arm, glowing faint blue. The cage was bigger than he thought. But cages have corners. And Jack was already counting them. They wanted to turn Jack into a tool. But when a silent ally sabotages the system from the inside, the facility's captors realize they've locked themselves in with the wrong man. Jack lay on the cold gurney, staring at the pulse monitor above his head, the steady green line marching forward like a metronome. The wristband on his arm still glowed pale blue, but every few minutes, it flickered, like a faulty connection. That wasn't standard. He noticed everything: the recycled air, the way the lights dimmed by 10% every 6 minutes, the faint static hum behind the walls, a server room nearby, probably 2 floors down. He clocked the guard rotations by sound alone. They weren't watching him closely. That was their first mistake. Hours passed. Or maybe only one. Jack didn't sleep, he never did in places like this. When the door finally opened, it wasn't the suited man from before. It was a woman. Mid-30s. No lab coat. Black cargo jacket. No name badge. Her eyes were sharp. Measured. "Don't say anything," she said quickly. "Just listen." She walked straight to the gurney, tapped the side of his wristband, and held something up to it, a signal blocker, repurposed from a glucose meter. The blue light blinked off. "I've disabled their vitals feed. You have 6 minutes before they notice." Jack's voice was low. "Who are you?" "Call me Lena. I used to be like you." "Meaning?" "Asset candidate. Until I started asking too many questions." Jack stared at her. "Why help me?" She gave a tired smile. "Because this place eats people. And you're the first one who didn't come in blind." She reached into her jacket and pressed a folded microdrive into his palm. "Names. Routes. Buyers. A copy of what they've scrubbed. That's your exit key." Jack sat up slowly, testing the loosened restraints. "And you?" "I'll buy you 10 minutes. After that, I'm just another ghost in the system." She turned to go. "Lena." She stopped. "You were right to bet on me." She gave a tight nod, then vanished through the secondary corridor. Jack stood fully now. The blood returned to his legs fast, too fast. His vision blurred, then steadied. He pulled the 4 out of his arm, snapped the wristband in 2, and shoved it down a drain. The timer in his head started ticking. Jack moved fast. Out the side exit. Down 2 halls. Past a locked med bay. He heard movement, voices in a nearby monitoring room. He ducked left, found a storage closet, pried it open. Inside, a uniform. He changed fast. Slipped into the outfit, pulled a cap low, and walked like he belonged. Confidence wasn't camouflage, it was armor. At the intersection ahead, a security tech glanced at him, paused, then nodded. Jack nodded back. Kept walking. The facility was bigger than he'd thought. At least 5 wings, most underground. No signage, just ID-based door locks and coated floor tiles. Clean, efficient, inhuman. He reached the hallway with the containment cells. Ramon Vega was still inside, conscious, barely. Jack tapped the keypad. Locked. He pulled out Lena's drive. No ports. He used a different method, a fire alarm trigger. Once he popped it, the system defaulted to manual override for emergency evacuations. The cell doors hissed open. Ramon blinked, trying to speak. No time, Jack muttered. Can you walk? Ramon nodded, winced, and steadied himself. Jack grabbed a blanket, threw it over the man's shoulders, and slung his arm over his shoulder. Together, they moved toward the north wing, the only one with active external venting, which meant one thing, exfil access. In the control room, the alarms finally registered. Unauthorized override in Wing C, a voice called out. Containment breach. The suited man from earlier, the so-called director, turned, furious. Who's running it? System scrambled. Feeds dark. Then he froze. The gurney, where's Subject Thorne? Jack reached the emergency lift just as Lena's voice crackled over the intercom system, hijacked, distorted slightly. Security lockdown suspended. Code 4A override accepted. Please proceed to evacuation sequence. The doors opened. Jack hauled Ramon inside. As the lift began to rise, the lights above flickered red. The intercom shifted again. This time, the voice was male. Cold. Jack Thorne. You were meant to join us. Not burn it down. Jack stared at the speaker. No one joins something they can tear apart. The elevator shot upward. Outside, the desert night waited, quiet, windless. Jack half-carried Ramon across the lake bed toward a small depression in the ground, where an old access pipe opened into a drainage wash. A motorcycle sat waiting beside it. A note on the seat, 3 miles east, drone blind spot. You've got 12 minutes. Jack helped Ramon into the saddle. I'll keep us upright, the man croaked. Jack started the engine. They roared off into the dark. 10 minutes later, miles from the site, a low rumble split the night air. The facility beneath Lake Virosa imploded, not with fire, but with silence. A collapse, triggered from inside. Systems failure. Jack didn't look back. Lena had made her move. And now they knew what he could do when cornered. But this was only one site. And the drive in his pocket contained coordinates for 9 more. 9 facilities. 1 blueprint. As Jack begins unraveling the network, he learns the next target isn't a site, it's a person. And they're already being hunted. The safe house east of Flagstaff looked like a condemned ranger station, boarded windows, half a roof, no power. But underground, it held a different truth. Jack sat in the glow of a portable red lamp, Ramon Vega resting 2 feet away, breathing steadier now. The scars on his arms told stories the medical logs didn't. Injections. Restraints. Recovery and regression. Someone had tested him, broken him, and then left him barely alive. But he was alive. That meant something. Jack slid the microdrive Lena had given him into a secure reader. The folders inside were arranged by region, Pacific, Southwest, Mid-Atlantic, and so on. Each region contained locations, GPS tags, labeled not with facility names but with extraction times, cargo codes, and status levels. Some were marked, retired, likely destroyed or shut down. But 9 were labeled active. And one of them had a file tagged priority hold, type B asset. He opened it. A photo loaded. A woman in her late 30s. Athletic build. Dark hair. Tactical vest. Lena. Jack leaned forward. The metadata showed a timestamp, 1 hour ago. Last seen, a roadside motel outside Holbrook, Arizona. She'd bought them time. But now they were buying hers. He left Vega with a burner phone, food, and a field pistol. If I'm not back in 24 hours, disappear. Vega didn't ask questions. He just nodded once, the way soldiers do when words get in the way. Jack hit the road in a borrowed pickup with stolen plates, heading north. He knew the area well, it was transit country. Miles of empty highway, motels with flickering vacancy signs, diners that served eggs 24/7 and never asked your name. He found the motel by 2 a.m. Room 12's window curtain moved slightly as he approached. No lights. No sound. He tapped twice on the door, sharp, soft, sharp. The signal. A breath. Then Lena's voice behind the wood, one on site. 3rd floor of the adjacent building. Watching the lot. He's not local. Jack replied, not for long. 15 minutes later, Jack was on the roof of the motel's back annex with a scoped monocular and a plan. The watcher was sloppy, talking on a headset, focused on the main road. Jack looped behind him, came up the fire escape, and disarmed him without a sound. He left him unconscious in a linen closet with his comms disabled. Back in the room, Lena was already packing. I figured I had 12 hours before they traced the breach, she said. They're quicker than I expected. They know you gave me the drive, Jack said. They'll want to turn you or terminate you. Lena zipped the duffel shut. I already made that choice. They drove west until dawn, then pulled into an abandoned rest stop just north of the Colorado River. Jack spread the microdrives map on the hood of the truck. Each site has a secondary tag, he said, pointing. These aren't just labs. They're relay points. For data. For supply. And for people. Lena frowned. Like a circuit. Exactly. You can't shut one down without rerouting traffic. That's why they recover so fast. But if you hit the right 3 in sequence, you break the loop. Jack nodded. Or at least freeze it long enough to expose the core. Lena traced her finger to a facility marked Norfolk, Virginia, Atlantic Relay Hub. This one's marked as redundant. That's a lie. They don't label things redundant unless they're critical. Agreed. If we want to make a move, we need backup. People we trust. Lena gave him a dry look. You have people. Jack reached into his jacket and pulled out a battered satellite radio. I've got the right people. 3 hours later, in a canyon clearing near the Arizona-New Mexico border, Jack stood by a fire pit as 3 vehicles pulled in one after another. Out stepped a mosaic of old faces, hard-worn, quiet, alert. Former truckers, veterans, medics, and more. Some with prosthetics. All with stories. All part of the network Jack had quietly maintained since he left the service. You brought us back together, one of them, a burly man named Carter, said. That means trouble. Jack smiled faintly. Always does. He laid out the plan. Targets. Timing. Risks. And the goal, not just taking out facilities, but uploading proof, public, traceable, undeniable. No more whispers. No more bodies without names. Just the truth. Lena glanced at the group. You sure they're ready for this? Carter chuckled. We don't run fast anymore. But we hit hard. That night, Jack looked up at the stars and saw more than sky. He saw every mile of road he'd driven. Every friend they'd lost. Every lie that needed undoing. The war wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about removal. Of a system. Of a sickness. And they had 8 days to take it apart. The only way to break the system is to flood it. Jack's team splits up to hit 3 relay sites, but one's already compromised, and someone they trust won't make it back. At 4 o'clock hours, the desert radio lit up with the old call sign. All haulers, stand by. Phase 1 begins in 30. Jack stood beside the lead rig, a reinforced Peterbilt with heat shielding on the cab and a modified comms array welded behind the sleeper. They weren't just rolling deep. They were rolling deliberately. Lena secured the SatLink terminal in the back of Carter's trailer, double-checked the GPS dampeners, then turned to Jack. You sure about splitting the team? It's the only way, Jack said. We hit 3 sites at once, Atlantic, Central, and West. Overwhelm the system. They can't redirect if we take out their crosslinks simultaneously. Then we meet back in Oregon. Jack nodded. One way or another. Mission loadout, Team West, Jack and Lena Arizona to San Bernardino Hub, data uplink and primary exposure node. Team Central, Carter and Valdez Texas Relay, mobile lab takedown. Team East, Rafik and Darnell Norfolk Relay, command level data siphon. Each team carried a drive. Each drive contained fragments of what Aversal had buried. Each one was enough to detonate headlines, if they could be uploaded in time. By 7:12, Jack and Lena were weaving through California highway traffic, just another rig among many. But the reinforced cab and hidden payload beneath the floor said otherwise. You think they'll intercept us? Lena asked, eyes scanning the rearview. Jack replied, they'll try. Question is, where? He was right. At mile marker 202, a maintenance truck pulled onto the shoulder ahead of them. Nothing strange, except it didn't move. Just sat there. Jack narrowed his eyes. They're boxing us. 2 more vehicles approached from behind. White vans. No plates. Lena didn't wait. She pulled a switch under the dash, activating a pre-wired smoke screen from the rear exhaust. The rig vanished in a gray plume as Jack yanked the wheel hard onto the service road. The chase was on. Meanwhile, in Texas, Carter and Valdez hit their mark with quiet efficiency. The relay site was disguised as a food distribution warehouse, and poorly at that. Carter took the front. Valdez slipped in through a loading dock and hacked the local comms, routing the facility's own cameras against it. They extracted the hard drive and planted an upload worm in the system's scheduling software. It would broadcast data in 15-minute packets to open networks across Europe, too slow to stop, too visible to erase. But just before they pulled out, Valdez caught a red light on the detonator he'd rigged to the internal power core. Manual override triggered. Carter looked at him. They're onto it. Valdez nodded. I'll finish. You go. No way, I'm already in. You leave, or we both get cooked. Silence. Then Carter turned, teeth gritted. Outside, he hit the ignition. Inside, Valdez smiled once and flipped the switch. In Virginia, things went worse. Rafik and Darnell reached the Norfolk site, an abandoned telecom center, but found the interior stripped. No servers. No logs. Just empty racks and bullet casings. Too clean. It was a setup. Before Rafik could warn the others, a sniper round hit the dirt inches from his boot. They bolted. Darnell took a round in the leg. They made it to the van, barely. Darnell, pale but steady, shoved the laptop toward Rafik. Get it out. Drive west. Don't stop. Rafik hesitated. You'll bleed out, I've got a patch kit and a pistol. Just go. Rafik drove. Darnell stayed behind. Back on I-10, Jack and Lena finally lost their pursuers after 50 miles of dirt road, switchbacks, and a detour through a dry riverbed. The rig groaned under the strain, but held. At 11:48 a.m., they reached the San Bernardino uplink node, a former aerospace testing site, now a shell of concrete, wires, and an old satellite array. Jack checked the signal. Still clean. They opened the bay doors and began the upload. The files hit in waves. Medical records. Transportation logs. Corporate memos. Video footage from Site 4B. Each packet sent to 3 open-source media archives, 1 whistleblower network, and a secure channel tied to congressional oversight. Lena watched the bars climb. Jack watched the horizon. At 12:03, the feed cut. Not from inside. From outside. A signal jam, high-powered, military-grade. They were close. Lena looked at him. We're not done. Jack grabbed the auxiliary antenna, flipped the manual override, and climbed the service ladder to the roof. There, in the open wind, he connected the hardline and restarted the uplink. A black SUV crested the ridge. Then another. Jack stayed where he was, hands steady. We just need 30 more seconds, he said through the headset. Lena's voice crackled in, You've got 10. One SUV opened fire. Bullets pinged off the satellite dish. Jack held the cable steady. The signal bar blinked once. Then again. Then, complete. He dropped the cable, dove off the ladder as a round ripped through the mounting bracket, and landed in the gravel just as the dish exploded behind him. Lena was already starting the engine. They were out before the smoke cleared. That night, in a storage bay near Sacramento, Jack got the call. Rafik had made it. Carter had survived. Valdez and Darnell hadn't. Jack stared at the floor for a long time. Then he opened the news. And saw it. Covert testing program exposed, U.S. contractor linked to illegal human trials, veterans caught in secret pipeline, FBI opens multi-state investigation, satellite leak confirms black site labs, whistleblowers sought, they'd broken the loop. But someone was still out there. Someone who hadn't shown their face. Yet. The network has been exposed, but the head remains hidden. Jack returns to Benwood, where the truth began, and where someone is still pulling strings behind a closed door. The air outside Benwood was different now. Thicker. Like the desert itself remembered. Jack's tires crunched over the same dirt lot where his journey began, the Golden Valley truck stop, but the silence was heavier than it used to be. He hadn't come for nostalgia. He came to finish what started here. 3 weeks had passed since the story broke. News outlets ran pieces daily. Whistleblower channels were flooded. Aversol's stock collapsed. Investigations spread like brush fire. But no one had named names. At least, none that mattered. The front men were disposable. The real architect, the one who ran the operation from behind mirrored lenses and chain-of-command obscurity, hadn't surfaced. Which meant they were still operating. And Jack knew where to find the last piece. Sheriff Denner. Inside the sheriff's office, the air conditioner still groaned in the same rhythm. Jack stepped through the door without knocking. Denner looked up slowly. His desk was clean. No papers. Just a badge and a cup of cold coffee. "You shouldn't be here," he said. Jack didn't answer. Denner sighed. "You got what you wanted. Headlines. Trials. Broken systems. I want the names you didn't put on paper." Denner's tone shifted. "You think I'm some mastermind?" "No. I think you're a manager. A handler. You kept the ground clean while the rest flew above it." The sheriff leaned back in his chair. "You know what happens to guys like me when the bottom falls out? They usually disappear." Denner smiled. "Exactly. And you showing up here? That tells me you're desperate." Jack walked forward, calm. "No. I'm curious." He dropped a photo on the desk, a grainy satellite image of Denner meeting with a man in a blue suit at a private airfield 2 days before Site 4B was buried. "Who's the suit?" Denner stared at the photo. "You think taking down the operation killed the idea?" he asked. "The serum wasn't the goal, Jack. It was the process. Predicting behavior. Engineering control." Jack's voice turned sharp. "You were experimenting on veterans." "They were broken already," Denner said, too quickly. "The world made them invisible. We gave them purpose." Jack didn't blink. "You gave them numbers." Denner reached into his drawer. Jack's hand moved toward his hip. But the sheriff only pulled out a flash drive. "Doesn't matter now," he said. "This is the last one. The fallback plan." He slid it across the desk. "It'll give you your name. But it won't give you peace." Jack picked it up. "Wasn't looking for peace." He turned to leave. Then paused. "One last thing," he said. Denner looked up. Jack's fist hit like a freight train. The sheriff slumped in his chair, unconscious. Some debts weren't for the courts. That night, Jack sat in the rig, laptop open, drive plugged in. One folder. Keystone, Phase 2, inside, a name. Senator Ronald M. Hargrave. The man had spoken on veteran mental health reform 2 days ago, on national television. A smiling face. A father. A patriot. And the one who'd signed off on it all. Jack looked out the windshield. The stars above Benwood flickered between the clouds, like signals trying to break through. He had choices now. He could take the file public. Ignite a second wave. Or he could go see the senator. In person. He reached for his radio and clicked the old band. "Ghostbird 1, he said. "I've got one more stop. It's time we end this clean." The response was immediate. "All haulers on standby. You lead. We roll." The highway stretched ahead, silent and endless. A convoy formed behind him. 10 rigs. All part of the network. All part of the cleanup. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was removal. Of power built on silence. Of systems built on ghosts. Of shadows hiding behind the badge. And Jack Thorne, former medic, former soldier, unwilling participant, was ready to finish the route. One last mile at a time.